Welcome to Perfect Word Media. I would like to welcome you to the Geraldine Cemetery. This is owned by the Geraldine Methodist Church, the Geraldine United Methodist Church, now known as the Rock Church, after a split in the church. And my grandparents, it's George Kelly Rogers right here. George Kelly Rogers and his wife. He was born April the 11th, 1895, and he passed away February the 18th, 1973. And it says at the bottom, father married December 25th, 1925.
Wow.
Mother. Notice, father married mother.
Yep.
And that's December 25th, Christmas Day, 1925.
It says at the very bottom, beyond the sunset.
Beyond the sunset, and that's 4 years before the Great Depression.
Yep.
They married in the midst of a very prosperous time, the Roaring 20s, and in 4 years, it was a global economic downturn like the world had never seen, and people starved to death all over the world. There was no safety net, so to speak, no food stamp program, even here in America.
So this was Eugena's mother, our father.
This is Miss Eugena's father, George Kelly Rogers, and his wife, Gladys Roden. See, that R stands for R-O-D-E-N.
Yep.
Okay? She gave birth to 13 children in a modest two-bedroom farmhouse located about, how many miles? 2.5 miles? 3 miles?
Something like that.
We'll go with 3 miles.
All right.
From this cemetery. The baby named Jackie Rogers died at 90 days, and they raised 12 children on an 80-acre cotton farm, and one of them was my mother, Eugenia Rogers Johnson Collins, aka Miss Eujena. Now, her mother, Gladys Roden, it was her grandfather killed and massacred and hung and shot by the government on Buck Island.
Wow.
The R stands for Roden. She was born November the 15th, 1902, and passed away May 20th, 1980. And I was born April 8th, 1969, and lived in Monroe County, Monroeville, where To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee was written. And we moved here in 1979. I was 10 years old, and I would go and fish with my grandmother, catfish in her pond, help her with the cows and the horses and the dogs, and help her with the strawberries and pick fig trees. And she passed away when we had only been here 1 year. The reason this is so important, folks, the reason this is so important is they are trying to kill my mother now, like they did her brother, David Keith Rogers. My grandmother right there, Gladys Roden, she was put through hell. She saw her grandfather and 4 uncles hung and shot without a trial on Buck Island, Marshall County, for their property by the government. She heard about it. That happened in 1863, before she was born, which was in 1902. But notice this, my grandfather was born when? One more time on his date. In 1895. Just from 63 to 95 is 32 years after the Buck Island Massacre. George Kelly Rogers was born. And both of these people, George Kelly Rogers and Gladys Roden Rogers, were well aware what had happened to Gladys's family on Buck Island in Marshall County. She had no idea they would then kill her son, David Keith Rogers, by forced suicide for his property, and then attack her daughter, Miss Eujena, and her grandson,
So David Keith is right back.
J. Monroe Johnson.
Right.
So let's go ahead right here. Look right behind, right at the foot of his parents. You've got David Keith Rogers. David Keith Rogers. Notice he was born June 17th, 1933. Christ Jesus was crucified when he was 33 years old. Anytime I come across the number 33, I think of the crucifixion of our Savior. Now, he killed himself, forced suicide, after he, in similar fashion to what the Marshall County authorities have done to me and my mother, Miss Eujena, in the year 2023. He killed himself after they ruined him financially. Mob violence ruined David Keith Rogers.
It says at the bottom, gone but not forgotten.
Gone but not forgotten. David, as in David in the Bible. Keith Rogers. And how old was he?
32.
32 years old. He left a wife and 2 children and killed himself in Albertville after he was financially ruined by mob violence that ruined him. Rampant theft, deceit. It was a targeted campaign of radical Baptists, if you don't know.
Notice something.
During the Lavender Scare, you can Google that on Wikipedia.
Right. Notice something. He died in August.
Yep, he died in August.
Okay.
August the 7th, 1965. And you were going to say Brother Chappell died August 31st,
That's the
August 31st, August 31st, 2022. Yeah. Okay, then you've also got another August death that we'll cover next.
Yes.
Let's go over here and cover Uncle Truman. And notice his name, True Man.
Right.
And notice what day True Man died.
You got to notice it. It's a power play right here.
Right here, folks. This is Gladys Roden Rogers' son.
Right, look at that.
And George Kelly Rogers' son. And they named him True, as in TRUE-MAN. And they spelled it TRUMAN. L. Rogers. And notice, married. Notice they put their married date. It's one marriage for my family, folks. That's how it normally works out. Married September 2nd, 1961. Children, Leanne and Morton Rogers. Now, Truman L. Rogers was born March 14th, 1932, in the same 80-acre cotton farm, modest farmhouse, about 3 miles from here. In the same farmhouse that Miss Eugenia was born. And folks, the doctor would arrive on a wooden wagon drawn by a mule. And the doctor would receive food or animals as payment, as in a couple of chickens, sack of potatoes, flour, as payment for delivering the child. And this happened 13 times in that modest farmhouse. And they raised 12 children. One of them, Miss Eugenia. This is the greatest generation of humans ever created in the United States. They lived during the 30s and 40s and 50s. Okay? Brother Chappell was part of that. They're known as the greatest generation. Hard times make great people. They were very simple, grateful, the kindest people you could ever know.
They're very humble.
Humble people. And folks, you got Chris Bailey, a fire-breathing demon, attacking Miss Eugenia right there. And this bank is about, what would you say, a football field length?
I say about two
Football field lengths from this graveyard. And what are they trying to do, folks? They are doing everything they can to rob Miss Eugena of $1 million property and take her farm through sabotage, lies.
They're trying to put her in this spot right over here is what they're trying to do.
They're trying to put her in this spot right over here, you know. I mean, yeah.
They did it to Brother Chapel. Folks, it's financial violence. It's social violence. Chris Bailey closed her accounts because she filed a complaint with the FDIC against what he did. What he really did is he engaged in a $1 million prime commercial real property heist with Margaret Lacey and Sheriff Phil Sims and
Isn't this right here?
Jimmy Carnes.
Parents?
Yes. You've got to understand something.
Oh, it's what
You've got to understand. Truman L. Rogers died August 31st, 2022.
Same day as this Chapel did.
He died the same day Chapel died.
True man died the same day Brother Chapel, spiritual grandpa, died. Brother Chapel was stressed to death. He had a massive heart attack. When you understand the way he was threatened with jail and a $4,000 fine after the opposing attorney said, we do not want any sanctions against Brother Chapel. The judge went ahead and sanctioned him $4,000 because Brother Chapel had the unmitigated gall to ask for a fair and impartial trial. He had already been denied that over and over. And he said, we just want to know who ordered him to do it. Who was he talking to?
He was talking to Mitch Floyd.
Judge Mitchell Floyd, District Court. And who was he talking about? We just want to know who ordered him to do it. Who's him? We know Brother Chapel's talking to District Court Judge Mitchell Floyd, and he says, we just want to know who ordered him to do it. Who is him?
John Allen Smith.
Chiropractor John Allen Smith, and do it. What is it?
The sexual assault.
Against who?
Against Johnson.
And you know who it was really against? God. You know who else? Miss Eugena. You know who else? Brother Chapel. Why? They rule by terror and fear. They want Miss Eugena's $1 million property, so they had her youngest son sexually assaulted.
They also want
and offered $5,000 for the son of Miss Eugena to keep his mouth shut, and to also keep his mouth shut not only about the sexual assault, but about the fact that the chiropractic doctor lied 5 times in Johnson's medical record after the fact, and to take $5,000 and be liable for $5,800 to Blue Cross and Blue Shield when they ask for their money back.
Here's where Marshall County is wanting to put Miss Eugena.
Here is where Marshall County is wanting to put Miss Eugena. And let me tell you, folks, that's why Johnson's fighting to the bitter end, because his mother does not deserve to be here yet. God can only tell you that.
Folks, when my stepfather, John Allred Collins, that was married to my mother for almost 30 years, when he passed away, they went for the kill because she lost her protector. And that's what happens, folks. That's the truth. When a widow that owns property loses her husband, you've got people in the government that are aware of that because a death certificate is filed.
And they're vulnerable.
And that makes them vulnerable.
And they hit them right when they're emotionally vulnerable. They went hard against my mother right when my stepfather, John Allred Collins, died. So that's Eugena Rogers Collins. Now, my father is a Johnson, and she was married twice, and that's Johnson for the first marriage and Collins for the second. So in round numbers, she's 83, and let's go with 30 years for Collins, and then we'll go with another 30 years for Johnson, and then she married at about 20 and then had me when she was 30. Now notice this, John Allred Collins was born September 30th, 1938, and passed away July the 11th, 2020. The violence escalated against Miss Eugena.
And yes, it did.
Yes, it did at 2020.
And it is in documented filings with the federal courts and the state courts.
I just want to say that Miss Eugenia does not deserve what she's having to go through, man. She just lost her husband,
Yeah.
and then she's vulnerable, and then y'all attack, then y'all unleash the lines on her, man. And imagine if it was you and somebody's doing that to you.
Yeah, and how have these people allowed themselves to be so manipulated by Margaret Lacey and Sheriff Phil Sims?
Well, guess what?
Guess what, Marshall County? You picked the right one, because Johnson's not going to lay down. He's going to fight for his mother, just like I would. You know what I mean?
Well, they're using lies. They are telling lies that Eugenia does not deserve her property. Really? Let me tell you what the truth is. She stopped them from stealing $5 million in the Supreme Court. That's what happened.
She deserves that property because she bought that property.
They know it, too. They know she bought the property and that it's her property.
And that's where they're trying to put her.
And they think they can steal it by way of bankruptcy. And they have tried this for the fourth business. This is the county. These are the judges. These are the lawyers. And notice this, when you've got a lawman, and that's the sheriff, Phil Sims, and you got a lawyer, that's Jimmy Carnes, Albertville City. Yeah, he became Miss Eugena's corporate attorney. Why? So he could do what? Undermine her. Manipulate her. He lied and said she had unpaid judgments on her property. An absolute lie. And then he lied to the state bar against it. He laughed. Folks, he laughed in front of me and Brother Chapel in court, in District Court Judge Mitchell Floyd's courtroom, in a very dramatic fashion. He got in front of Brother Chapel, throwing his head back under the guise of joking with another person. In other words, for example, he said to a man, for example, how you doing today? Well, fair to middling. Whatever the man said, he is dramatically kicking his head back and laughing and cackling. And Brother Chapel, that hurt his feelings. Brother Chapel was a wise man. And you know what? He would never admit that it hurt his feelings. He said, Brother Jimmy needs to get right with the Lord.
You know what?
You know what? Jimmy Carnes was rubbing it in Brother Chapel's face. And what it was, I've destroyed your fourth business. I'm going to force you into foreclosure. Force Jimmy Carnes into federal prison. He engaged in a federal RICO sabotage campaign against Miss Eugena's $1 million prime commercial real property.
You know what they're trying to do? They're trying to fix.
You know what Marshall County's trying to do? They're trying to put the rest of the numbers right there on that headstone right there. That's what they're trying to do. It ain't complete till that's complete. And let me tell you something. Only God could fill that out.
And folks, I talked to a high-powered man in Huntsville recently, and I told him this is how they kill people. And he nodded his head without saying a word. He did not want that to be recorded, but he nodded his head. Yeah, this is how they kill people.
Hey, folks, it's for real.
This is how they killed David Keith Rogers. They force people into financial ruin. They attack. And relentlessly, it's a swarming theft. And they tell people lies to motivate them. They told people that we abuse children. They did. We've got that recorded. That's how they motivated people. And the truth was they were bragging that they were going to steal $1 million property. You understand? Tell people they rape kids and we'll steal their property. That's the real Marshall County. And they have poisoned DeKalb County by convincing Chris Bailey to lie against Miss Eugena. Now, let's say this. There was another grave. Did we cover Truman and Gala? Yes. George Kelly and Gladys Rogers? Yes. Do y'all understand? Did we cover Gala Rogers? That is Melissa Wilburn. See, Gala was Gala Galloway. And Melissa was Melissa Galloway. She married and became Melissa Wilburn. That is the key Right there.
That is the trigger.
You got to understand. You've got to go back just for 1 minute and cover Gayla Rogers. That's the key. If you don't understand, that's the key. To what? Rick Joe?
That's the key, because she witnessed the conspiracy. She witnessed
That's the key to the conspiracy right there. Gayla G. Rogers. Show Rogers right down here on the bottom, please. You gotta understand, that's my Aunt Gayla. She married my Uncle Truman. He died on the same day spiritual grandpa, Brother Chapel, dropped dead in the same exact spot that District Attorney Steve Marshall lied to Miss Eujena and said she would get justice in a $40,000 cash giveaway. By who? Margaret Lacey.
Check this out.
And guess what? The district attorney's office issued an illegal judgment and gave Eugenia 0, but convicted a thief. That was one of 8 illegal judgments from Marshall County.
Check this out.
And Brother Chapel dropped dead exactly where Steve Marshall lied to Miss Eugenia.
4 plus 1 is 5.
Yep.
3 plus 2 is 5.
Yep. 5.
6 minus 1 is 5.
Yep. You got 5s all over the place, folks.
Oh my gosh.
He just added, let's do that. He added 4 plus 1 is 5 there. He added 3 plus 2 is 5 here. And then 6 minus 1 is 5 here. You just look for patterns. And folks, these people are absolutely busted as a ring of thieves. It's a theft ring of lawyers and bankers and judges and chiropractic doctors. This is how they kill people, folks, for their property. And they've been killing my family now for going on 300 years. It started in 1863, which is 160 years ago.
Check this out.
To this year.
Let's go back.
And that was for their land. And after that, you've got my grandfather in Macon, Georgia, being shot by a sheriff on a sheriff's orders, and the sheriff's deputy committed suicide 10 months to the day after my grandfather on my father's side was shot on orders of a Macon, Bibb County. That's Macon, Georgia. The city is Macon, and the county is Bibb. And they ordered my grandfather killed. The sheriff did. And the deputy killed himself. Do y'all realize there are 2 suicides in this story? And that's David Keith Rogers, and that's also the deputy that killed my grandfather in Macon, Georgia on the 10th month anniversary. He shot himself because, look, the sheriff of Macon, Georgia, which is Bibb County, he wanted a Christmas present and ordered my grandfather killed on Christmas morning. And the sheriff was a member of the Ku Klux Klan and involved in a moonshine trafficking operation.
Check this out.
And they wanted to silence my grandfather, my great-grandfather in Macon, because of the truth he knew about the moonshine operation.
You got a 25 there and
Yep,
25
you got
there.
December 25th, 1925. And notice they killed my father's grandfather on Christmas Day, December 25th, 1935. They hung right here. They hung Gladys R., which is Roden, Rogers's family.
Wow.
That is 4 uncles and a grandfather and a cousin, all hung and shot without a trial on Buck Island. They call it the Buck Island Massacre, and it was for their land. And all of this is white on white violence. You got radical Baptists killing my family for 160 years. That's what you got. Radical Baptists. They justify this with God. God told me you are unworthy, and he wants me to have your property.
There's another 5 right there.
You've got 5-0 for the county. They sued us for $5 million, trying to take everything we were worth. They audited us. That's the state revenue department.
Everything in your family's got 5.
Yes.
Something's up with a 5, man.
They audited us, determined our net worth was $5 to $6 million, and then they came after us for $5 million, and then they sabotaged $10 million, and they also wanted to render my mother unlicensable because of a 12-member jury verdict. That's what they do, folks. I hope you heard me.
3 minus 8's 5.
Yes, 3 minus 8 is 5. I want y'all to hear that real quick. They want to discredit you
Yes.
with a jury-tempered verdict so you can never make any more money again. With one lie, you are a liar. That's what they did to Miss Eujena. With a 12-member tempered jury, they convicted her as a liar. And with that conviction, she's in threat of $5 million cash extortion, never be licensed again as a finance company owner because she was deemed an unscrupulous business owner that had damaged an all-American, clean-cut boy, an attorney's son in Marshall County, Greg Fuller, who was the fall guy and part of the scam. Okay, when my mother appealed that to the Supreme Court, they came to kill her. They sabotaged $10 million. See, because they wanted to take $5 million and make her unlicensable as a money services business for the FDIC. One lie, and they're going to take everything she owns and not allow her to work. They're denying her her right to work. You see that? They want to demonize you. They want to discredit